and religious gatherings, educational institutions, malls, restaurants, flight, metro services remain suspended. Interstate movement of vehicles allowed with mutual consent between states. Cabinet Secretary Rajiv Gauba seeks states' cooperation in running more Shramik special trains for migrant workers. Holds video conference with Chief Secretaries of states and Union territories. Railway Board ready to run more special trains if states provide quick clearance. Finance Minister unveils the fifth and last tranche of reforms under Atmanirbhar Bharat package. Further boost to ease of doing business with focus on MSMEs. Minimum threshold for insolvency proceedings raised to 1 crore rupees from 1 lakh rupees. More funds for Manrega. Significant improvement in the recovery rate in India as it goes up to 37.5%. Over 34,000 people recover. Active cases stand around 54,000. Very severe cyclonic storm Amphan intensifies into extremely severe category, likely to hit West Bengal, Bangladesh coast on Wednesday. And Brazil overtakes Italy and Spain as virus cases grow. Death toll nears 90,000 in the US, but in Europe, many countries including Spain and Italy set to further ease the lockdown as situation improves. Good morning, you're watching DD News and I'm Preeti presenting the bulletin. Our top story first, the nationwide lockdown has been extended by 2 more weeks till 31st of May. In an order, the National Disaster Management Authority said that lockdown measures need to be extended in order to contain the spread of COVID-19. With the nationwide lockdown extended till 31st of May, a new set of guidelines has also been issued which have to be followed during the lockdown. Up next, we take a look at the following graphics that will tell you what is allowed and what is not. First, we look at the activities that remain prohibited. All domestic and international air travel of passengers is prohibited. Metro rail services are not allowed. Schools, colleges, educational, training or coaching institutions will remain closed. Hotels, restaurants and other hospitality services will also remain closed. However, restaurants shall be permitted to operate kitchens for home delivery of food items. Cinema halls, shopping malls, gymnasia, swimming pools, theatres, bars and assembly halls are prohibited. Sports complexes and stadia will be permitted to open, but spectators will not be allowed. All religious places or places of worship shall be closed for public. And up next, we take a look at the activities that are permitted with restrictions. And on your screens, we will up next have the activities that are permitted with restrictions. And here we have them: interstate movement of passenger vehicles and buses with mutual consent of the states or union territories concerned. Intrastate movement of passenger vehicles and buses will be allowed, but with some restrictions. Up next is the division of the zones in containment zones, buffer zones, red zones, green and orange zones. The delineation of red, green and orange zones will be decided by respective states and union territories. Within the red and orange zones, district authorities will demarcate containment zones and buffer zones. And after this, let's get you details of what containment zone means. In containment zones, only essential activities will be allowed. Strict perimeter control to ensure that there is no movement of people in or out of these zones. Also, intensive contact tracing, house-to-house surveillance and other clinical interventions will be conducted here. Night curfew will also be there, and the movement of individuals shall remain strictly prohibited between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. And up next is protection of vulnerable persons, persons above 65 years of age, people with comorbidities, pregnant women and children below the age of 10 years shall stay at home except for essential or health purposes. Also, states and union territories, based on their assessment of the situation, may prohibit certain other activities in various zones or impose such restrictions as deemed necessary. And up next, let's get you the details of the Arogya Setu app. Now, the employers should ensure that Arogya Setu app is installed by all employees having compatible mobile phones. Special directions to be given to ensure movement of persons and goods in certain cases. States and union territories shall not dilute these guidelines issued under Disaster Management Act 2005 in any manner. And let's get you more directives on COVID-19 management. Wearing a face cover is compulsory in all public and workplaces. Spitting in public and workplaces shall be punishable with a fine. Social distancing shall be followed by all patients in public places. Marriage functions shall ensure social distancing and not more than 50 guests are allowed. And our correspondent Arun Sharma is joining us to get us more on that. Arun, now we see lockdown 4 will be implemented for another 15 days till 31st of May. But we see some relaxations. When we talk of the guidelines which have been put forth. Get us more details, even a broad outline to our viewers, what all is permitted in different zones. You talk more about it, and also let us know how will this lockdown be different from the previous lockdowns.
That's right, Preeti. Now, as Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that lockdown 4 will be very much different from lockdown 3, lockdown 2 and lockdown 1. So that's what it happened. In lockdown 1 and lockdown 2, what we saw that there were more stricter guidelines as far as the lockdowns are concerned. In lockdown 3, there was some ease, but then yes, more or less, center was deciding the guidelines. Center was ensuring that the lockdown should be in place, and more or less the center was taking a leadership role. But now in lockdown 4, states have more say, states have more power to enforce the lockdown and to take decisions as far as lockdowns are concerned. So states have more power and more say as far as lockdown 4.0 is concerned. Now, if we talk about the big takeaways of this lockdown, number one is the interstate and intrastate bus movement and passenger vehicle movement. Now, this movement wasn't allowed in the previous 3 lockdowns. So now, if in case 2 states have a mutual consent, and if they want to allow bus services or passenger vehicle services, the bus travel or the passenger vehicle travel can take place. For example, if Delhi and Haryana, they have a mutual consent, if they want to run a bus between interstate movement primarily, so they, with the mutual consent, can allow that bus, keeping in mind all the social distancing guidelines and of course the guidelines and directives given by the government. Second important part is the stadiums and sports complexes. Earlier, the sports minister clearly indicated that they're looking forward for opening up of sports complexes. So now in lockdown 4, the sports complex and the stadiums will open, but there will be no spectators as such. That means the athletes, the sports person can prepare themselves for the national event and international event, which are lined up in 2020 and 21. So yes, there will be no spectators as of now. Third important part is that, Preeti, that states have more power and more say, as I said it earlier. So now the red zone, the green zones, and of course the orange zone, all these zones will be decided by the states, keeping in mind the directives and the guidelines issued by the central government. That means the states will not be in a position to dilute these guidelines, but yes, they can enforce more stricter restrictions in various places. But yes, the important part that has come out in this lockdown 4 is that states will have to, under the category of red zone and orange zone, states will have to also decide the buffer zone and the containment zone. We were seeing that they were containment zone, but yes, a buffer zone will also have to be created. That means if in case any COVID patient has been found in some house, in a specific radius of that house, that area will be considered as buffer zone. So that means more stricter rules as far as the containment zone and the buffer zone is concerned, and only essential services will be allowed in the buffer zone and the containment zone. So that means states will have more power to start the economic activities in the green zone and of course in the orange zone going forward. So as Prime Minister Narendra Modi said earlier, Preeti, that Jaan bhi and Jahan bhi. So now clearly the focus is on more, or you can say that more micromanagement or micro level work has been done now. That means taking care of red zone, and into red zone also the focus will be more on containment zones and buffer zones that will be created under the red zone.
All right, Arun. Now, you're telling us that Jahanbi has been taken care of in this lockdown, and also we've seen that with restrictions, economic activity will begin in all across the country. Now, can we say, or how do you in fact gauge the situation after this lockdown? Can we expect this to be the last lockdown? Can things get back to normal after lockdown 4?
Preeti, to this question, I always answer one thing, and that is, it is not we who will decide the timeline, it is the virus that will decide the timeline. Because you try to understand this fact that today we'll be having close to 1 lakh cases, or we are already above 90,000 cases all across the country. The rate of doubling is gradually slowing down. So that's a good part. I mean, more than 11 days and we're doubling on that part. So what we have done in lockdown 1 and lockdown 2, we have tried to buy the time and we have tried to create health infrastructure, health ecosystem in lockdown 1 and lockdown 2. So look at this way. Now we have a capacity testing capacity of more than 1 lakh per day. That means we can test close to 1 lakh tests per day as far as the COVID patients are concerned. Second important part, we have a fantastic health infrastructure now. That means COVID hospitals are concerned. So every state are dedicating a specific or dedicated COVID hospitals going forward, so that the COVID patients can be kept over there. So in last 2 lockdowns and last 3 lockdowns primarily, you can say that we have created health infrastructure going forward. So now the idea and the focus is that this spread should not increase in rural areas, in tier 2, tier 3 towns where it has been minimal as of now, because we are seeing this fact that because a lot of reverse migration is happening as of now. So government is only having one challenge, that this virus should not spread in the rural areas or the tier 2, tier 3 towns, and that's what government is trying to stop at the moment. And yes, as I said earlier, the virus will decide the timeline. So if in case we're in a position to slow down the rate of the spread, or primarily slow down the daily rise in the patients or the COVID patients, yes, we can expect the lockdown guidelines to be eased further, but can't say will be the only last lockdown, or the lockdown 4.0 will be the last. It's the virus that will decide the timeline.
All right, Arun, thank you so much for joining us with those inputs. That was our correspondent Arun Sharma spelling out more details of lockdown 4, which was announced yesterday, which means for another 15 days till 31st of May, lockdown 4 will be observed. And Cabinet Secretary Rajiv Gauba yesterday held a meeting with the states via video conference to discuss about the specific issues regarding lockdown 4, under which states have to decide various zones and the activities to be allowed there. The Cabinet Secretary requested the states to cooperate in the running of more Shramik special trains to facilitate the movement of migrant labourers. The Railway Board Chairman, who was present at the meeting, said that more special trains can be pressed into service if states provide quick clearances. State governments were also requested to make DMs and SPs responsible for the safety and well-being of the migrant labourers. Migrant labourers found walking have to be escorted to a camp and put on board a Shramik special train. A limited number of activities will remain prohibited throughout the country, but states can decide how to deal with a containment zone or red, orange or green zones. And now we get to the other big news. The fifth and the final tranche of economic stimulus package was unveiled by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. And to find out all about the reforms, we get you the details in this report.
Reform was the central theme of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's press conference on Sunday. Clearly, the focus of the fifth and final tranche of Rs 20 lakh economic stimulus package was on 7 sectors, including Manrega, education and health.
Today, I have 7 such steps to tell you. First one is Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. Second is on health, and both in rural and urban. And together with it, I put an during the COVID period, education-related steps that have been taken. So that's the second. Third is on businesses and COVID. Fourth is on decriminalization of the Companies Act. Fifth is talking about ease of doing business and related matters. Sixth is on public sector enterprises related matters and the policy thereof. Seventh, state governments and resources related to state governments.
Nirmala Sitharaman announced an additional 40,000 crore rupees for the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. It would come as a huge relief for the migrant laborers who have returned home from various parts of the country.
A lot of workers are going back to their villages, and we've made provision so that they can also join in if they want to enroll in Manrega. So government will now allocate an additional 40,000 crores. This way we'll ensure.
Finance Minister also announced a series of measures for education sector in general and online education in particular. She said that the Prime Minister e-Vidya program for multi-mode access to digital or online education will be launched immediately. It will consist of Diksha, a one nation, one digital platform facility for school education. There will be one earmarked TV channel for all classes from class 1 to class 12. Swayam Prabha DTH channels will support and reach those who do not have access to internet. There will be extensive use of radio, community radio stations and podcasts. Special e-content will be available soon for visually and hearing impaired children. Top 100 universities will be permitted to automatically start online courses by 30th May. And Manodarpan, an initiative for psychological support of students, teachers and families for mental health and emotional well-being, will be launched soon. Health sector reforms were also on the government's agenda. Public health labs will be set up in each and every district of the country. In addition, the law will be amended to prevent attacks on healthcare workers.
Reforms and initiatives have been put in place. Public expenditure on health will be certainly increased. Investments at the grassroots level will be ramped up for health and wellness centers, both in the rural and urban areas.
Finance Minister also announced that Indian public sector companies will be able to list their securities directly in foreign jurisdictions. Private companies which list non-convertible debentures on stock exchanges will not be regarded as listed companies, which will enable ease of doing business in the country.
Now companies can list their securities directly in foreign jurisdictions. So this is one big step forward for Indian companies. And then second, listings of non-convertible debentures on stock exchange will not be regarded as those companies as listed companies.
Finance Minister added that the government has decided to decriminalize Companies Act violations involving minor technical and procedural defaults. 7 compoundable offences have been altogether dropped and 5 other will have to be dealt with under alternative framework.
Decriminalize most of the sections in Companies Act where you have violations which are technical and procedural in nature. So we want to decriminalize all of them. Then compoundable offences where there are, they can now be tried under internal adjudicating mechanism, and this way one, it becomes simpler, it can be sorted out at the local, the local internal adjudicating mechanism route rather than go to the courts.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi's pledge of total spending of rupees 20 lakh crores or about $265 billion to weather the fallout of the coronavirus pandemic under Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan is about 10% of India's GDP in 2019-20 and ranks behind stimulus provided by Japan, the US, Sweden, Australia and Germany. News Night Desk, DD India.
Yellow cyclonic alert has been issued for West Bengal and North Odisha coasts as extremely severe cyclonic storm Amphan looms over central parts of South Bay of Bengal and adjoining Central Bay of Bengal. The very severe cyclonic storm moved north-northeastwards with a speed of 13 kilometers per hour during the past 6 hours and intensified into an extremely severe cyclonic storm. It is very likely to intensify further during the next 6 hours and is very likely to move north-northeastwards. As part of the second phase of Vande Bharat mission, 3 flights from Gulf states to Ernakulam in Kerala landed on Sunday night with stranded Indian nationals. The flights were from Dubai, Abu Dhabi and Bahrain. Air India Express flight from Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Gulf Air from Bahrain arrived in Nedum Basari Airport on Sunday night. Dubai flight had 179 people, including 2 infants. 181 people, including an infant, arrived from Abu Dhabi and 127 people landed from Bahrain. 66 Bahraini nationals were returning home from Ernakulam on board the Gulf Air flight on its trip back to Bahrain. As per Ministry of Health's latest data, the total number of confirmed cases in India has reached 90,927. Out of this, 53,946 are active cases. 34,108 people have fully recovered from the viral infection and 2,872 people have lost their lives. That's it in this edition of the News This Hour. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.